The rise of one-by-one retro gaming handhelds is here. It's a niche market, but one that manufacturers are taking full advantage of. And it's the only good bit of innovation I've seen in this space this year. What's sad is that this trend really started a while ago when a small community of makers revealed the ZPG Unicorn, a handheld crafted from lots of small ideas, showcasing a one-by-one display in a beautiful form factor. But because this market is so aggressive and the money is in quantity, not quality, well-known manufacturers decided to innovate and create their own as swiftly as possible. Powkitty jumped on board with a one-by-one vertical called the RGB20SX, and now Anbernic has revealed their Android versions of what is basically the ZPG Unicorn. Like, I do like this device and there is a full review coming up soon, but the RG Cube has impressed me and I know a lot of you will like it too. The handheld is fairly big compared to other Anbernic devices, such as the recently released RG35XX SP, yet feels small in the hands because of the centralized 4-inch 720 IPS display. My hands rest nicely around the shell, close enough to touch my fingers together on the back, and because the screen is fairly high, there's enough space to add 2 joysticks and hide the menu buttons away under your palms. It makes the gaming experience incredibly enjoyable, and it's one of Anbernic's most comfortable handhelds to date. Anbernic decided to use Android as an operating system for this device too, making it even more unique, opening up Android games, cloud streaming, and more. Which brings me on to today's sponsor, a unique retro-style turn-based pixel art game called Sword of Convallaria, which is now available on Android, iOS, and PC, and features the legendary composer Hitoshi Sakimoto, who created the soundtrack for many retro games including Final Fantasy, Vagrant Story, and Tekken. You can collect and train a roster of mercenaries, customize your squad, and apply your own strategies to save the nation, in the style of many of your favorite retro games of the past. This game reminds me very much of Golden Sun and Final Fantasy Tactics. The art form is incredibly nostalgic, and those of you who love your cozy pixel art games will feel like you are reliving the old classic games from back in the day, but in a new modern way. Now that this game is available on mobile, it opens it up to the opportunity to be played on many of the Android-based retro handhelds that I have reviewed, including the RG Cube, which I am reviewing today, even if the screen is a 1:1 ratio. There's over 120 hours of rich single-player gameplay for you to explore, and the main storyline, Spiral of Destinies, is jam-packed with unique events, character side quests, and hardcore battles which require strategic planning for you to succeed. Sword of Convallaria can be downloaded using the links below in the description box. Now let's jump in to the official review. As soon as I unboxed the RG Cube, I was greeted with an installation launcher, which is one of the first times I have seen Anbernic do this. It basically installs all of the best Android emulators for you with the press of a button. Something competitors have done for a while now, and I mention it in all of my Anbernic reviews because it's been needed for a long time, so it's good to see that they are listening and are integrating it into all of their RG Cubes, which is great because it works straight out of the box. And one thing I did notice as well is that all of the buttons are already mapped as well, so when you jump into your N64 or Dreamcast or Game Boy emulators, there's pretty much no setup, which is really good for those of you that are giving this as a gift to someone who isn't a pro at this kind of stuff. In terms of build quality and design, the RG Cube is certainly not pocketable. It's rather built for longer gaming sessions, thanks to the ergonomics, large battery capacity of 5200 milliamps, and the stacked shoulder buttons, which are incredibly comfortable. I have not seen these shoulder buttons on Anbernic products before, and they're now one of my favorites of the bunch. They're firm, RT-LT, don't click, they have good travel to them, and are perfectly located with tiny grip detailing on top. If you look closely on the back, you'll also notice that they have added small areas of the grip detailing too, and the fan is located away from being obstructed by your hands. Moving to the face, it's hard to ignore the LED joysticks that boast millions of different colors to choose from, but in reality, my eyes can only really detect about 25 of them, but it's a nice addition. You can select through different kind of like patterns, or you can go straight for white LEDs or ones that move with your analog sticks. It's highly customizable and a much welcomed feature, even if it does decrease battery life slightly. The joysticks themselves are whole joysticks and are very good quality. They click down and have fluid movement, but I did notice that they do touch the edges of the case, even if it still registers full motion. This isn't a major issue, but proper handheld nerds will notice that they touch, and the stick does grip to the shell ever so slightly when it touches. Because they have added the LED joysticks, it does sacrifice the quality slightly, especially if some of you prefer larger ranges of movement on your analog sticks. This one doesn't move as far as some competitors, which you can see from the gamepad tester footage. It does like to snap to the 8 directions slightly, which again is a personal preference for many, but some don't like this, and it's because of that range the movement isn't that vast. ANBERNIC has decided to feature the full-blown circular D-pad on here, which some handheld enthusiasts hate and some love. For this device, it just feels right to have this, even if I am a lover of their original D-pad. Menu buttons have been lowered towards the chin, which I personally prefer compared to them being high up on the device. There's an ANBERNIC button which will open and redirect you straight to the ANBERNIC launcher for those that want something a little more simple than Android 13. It's a neat way to organize your games, and it is a look at ANBERNIC's first steps into creating proper launchers, but again, it just needs quite a bit of work. On the other side, you'll find Start and Select alongside the action buttons, which are high gloss, and on this beige white version, mine are colored, which spice up the face a little bit. These are soft to press and have a good amount of travel to them, so button smashing actually feels fun on this thing. There's really no complaints about the buttons, apart from them being high gloss, which, as I say in many of my reviews, if you're a sweaty gamer like me, they do get a little bit slippery. The screen used is beautiful, there's no denying it. The colors are incredibly saturated and the brightness goes very high, allowing it to be a good device to use outside in daylight. However, there is a little bit of light bleed on one of my devices, which is a shame as the display was pretty much close to flawless. It's not a major deal breaker and will only really be noticed when playing games at night with borders, but it goes to show you that ANBERNIC have cut corners here, which is a real shame because this is a $170 device. It's not cheap and one that they shouldn't be taking risks on. For example, you know, the one I've just got in, the RG40XXH, this is where they should be taking risks in terms of innovation, not on their $170 devices. My light bleed isn't as severe as some that I have seen on social media, and it's only visible on 1 out of 2 of my RG Cubes, but it is a known negative for this device, and it's usually luck of the draw depending on if this happens to your device or not, and it varies in severity, so good luck, I guess, which shouldn't be a thing. ANBERNIC should be taking all of these back and fixing them, and I can imagine if you go, hey ANBERNIC, mine has light bleed, they'll probably just go, big deal, or they'll send you a screen to fix it yourself or something along those lines. They will never go, please send this back to us and we will give you a new one. And that's just the industry that we're in. So if you do get light bleed, oh, that sucks. Now let's talk about emulation. I would like to clarify that this device is a very niche device, and the magic of this lies in the 4:3 aspect ratio or the 1:1 game consoles that are pretty rare these days. 16:9 games such as PSP and cloud gaming looks, how do I explain it, terrible. You should not buy this device if you are playing 16:9 games. You only get maybe a maximum of 3 inches in terms of display size, and you get the massive black borders, so don't do it. For example, throughout my review process, I found myself playing Game Boy games, Neo Geo Pocket, Dreamcast, Mega Drive and PlayStation 1 games. To me, this is where the handheld excels, thanks to the great ergonomics and square display. Internally, the RG Cube features great specs on paper. For example, it has a Unisoc T820 CPU, a Mali G57 GPU, and 8 GB of RAM, making it a very capable handheld. And that's why I think ANBERNIC has priced this, you know, quite high if you ask me. But I have to admit, as much as these specs sound great, I was finding that it would struggle with larger GameCube games, alongside frame rate drops across more intense PlayStation 2 games. Now don't get me wrong, there's still a wide number of GameCube and PS2 games that this can play and will work well on, but that's certainly its limit, and I wouldn't advise anyone buying this if they are expecting flawless emulation on these consoles. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. And this brings me on to why I would have actually liked to see ANBERNIC lower the price and lower the specs slightly, because the ergonomics and the niche market for this kind of works well, but the high price tag pushes people away from that. I think they should have lowered the CPU, capped it at Dreamcast, and knocked off 40 bucks, in all honesty. Like, my experience of gameplay in that area up to Dreamcast and even Nintendo DS is incredible. The Nintendo DS works really well here thanks to the long display, allowing you to stack the screens comfortably and control the bottom display using the touchscreen. Neo Geo Pocket is an absolute pleasure. Dreamcast looks beyond beautiful thanks to the bright display, and Game Boy Color just fits. And all of this can be done for over 6 hours on a single charge thanks to the large battery life. It's genuinely a really fun handheld to play on. ANBERNIC have created a stunning premium 1x1 device for those that are happy to spend a pretty penny on something like this. And even though I do think it's overpowered and super niche, it's hard to hate. Anything above 150 bucks, ANBERNIC does kind of improve the build quality on it, and it's very obvious as soon as you touch this device that it's made and it's going to last a very, very long time. I just think it's slightly overpriced for what it does, and I wish they made like a base version or a more affordable version of this and kept the lovely LED joysticks and the Dreamcast kind of and Nintendo DS era of emulation, because that is where I am finding myself spend most of my time. I'm not playing PS2 on here. I'm not really playing most GameCube games on here. For me, this is a 1x1 beast and probably is the best 1x1 handheld on the market right now. But I just wish it was a little cheaper. I mean, everything could be cheaper, right? But I just think ANBERNIC should have spent a little bit more time on market research and figured out who really wants to buy this. And I think a $129 price tag and a little lower CPU would have made this a flawless product if they got rid of the light bleed. So there we have it, a brief review today, but I'm liking what ANBERNIC are doing with the 1x1 display. Just needs a little bit of TLC, you know. So if you enjoyed this review, hit subscribe. I have this bad boy that I'm reviewing currently, so stay tuned for that. This is $69. This is $169. This is a 4x3, this is a 1x1, but this is the price range that really sells. And I think ANBERNIC are gonna see it with the quantity that this is pushing. They might be a bit like, oh damn, I wish I maybe have made that a little bit cheaper and a little less powerful, but doesn't deny that it's great. Again, just needs some TLC. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next review. Bye-bye.